All right, we are off to our very last section of this part of the chapter and to a hugely popular field in IO psychology, and that is the area of personality. I actually teach a doctoral class in this area, and it's one of my very favorites and is also increasing in importance within the field of IO psychology. I hope you find it important and interesting as well. Let's start off with a definition. You can think of personality as the unique and relatively stable patterns of behaviors, thoughts, and emotions shown by individuals. In IO psychology, we know that personality is important because it predicts both productive and counterproductive work behaviors. I just realized that Mr. Andrew Pagoda is sitting here watching me as I record this, that we realize that you cannot click on links. So when I said in the last section to go ahead and click on a link, he was laughing because you can't click on a link in YouTube. Instead, we're going to post the links that you may want to examine in Blackboard for you. So when you want to take a look at any of that information, it will be there for you. And of course, these web links are ridiculously long, and we would never expect for you to write them down. So we'll have them there prepared for you in Blackboard. We hope you'll take a look at them. But as I was just saying, personality is important because it predicts both productive aspects of performance, but also the dark side of performance that we'll talk about later on in this semester, which we call counterproductive work behaviors, which are the things that we do not want people doing in the workplace, like stealing and gossiping and violence in the workplace. So personality is important in predicting a lot of these types of behaviors. The most popular model for studying personality in industrial organizational psychology is called the Big Five model. This model states that researchers suggest that we can describe anyone's personality using 5 different traits, which are described by the Big Five model. The easiest way to remember these characteristics, these 5 characteristics, is simply to memorize the acronym OCEAN, which stands for the 5 personality characteristics of openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, or what we also refer to as emotional stability. O, as I said, stands for openness to experience, and it asks you the questions, are you curious, intelligent, imaginative, independent? Conscientiousness asks whether or not you are responsible, prudent, have self-control, are persistent, planful, and achievement-oriented. I hope you guys are all conscientious. Extroversion asks whether or not you are sociable, assertive, talkative, ambitious, and energetic. Agreeableness, asks whether or not you're good-natured, cooperative, trustworthy, likable, and friendly. And finally, neuroticism asks whether or not, even though it sounds negative, asks whether or not you're secure, calm, low in anxiety, and low in general in emotionality. In other words, are you prone to negative emotions? Just like G is considered a big daddy in employment selection, conscientiousness is considered the big daddy in personality. In fact, Barrick and Mount found that conscientiousness was related to success in all aspects of work in all occupations that they studied. And this was a huge study back in 1991, so it was hugely important. If you study conscientiousness, you can find that you can break it down into 2 more narrower facets known as achievement and dependability. Let's take a look at both of these differences. Achievement is defined as the characteristics of hard work, persistence, and a general desire to do good work. And we have found in our research that the achievement aspect, if you will, of conscientiousness is related to or a better predictor of effort on the job. On the other hand, the dependability aspect of conscientiousness refers to whether or not you are disciplined, whether or not you're well organized, whether or not you're respectful of laws and rules, are honest, and whether or not you're able to accept authority. And what we have found with our research in IO psychology is that dependability, or the dependability aspect of conscientiousness, is a much better predictor of whether or not you'll be reliable on the job. Would you like to take a look at your own results with this scale? If so, we'll have some links to check out a website, and you can take the Big Five personality inventory yourself, and you can also take a look at my results if you're interested to see how I pan in terms of these different personality characteristics. One thing that's important to note is that there is a different relationship between personality and job performance when we talk about how much control an employee has. And what we know here is that when an employee has a lot of control or autonomy in their job, personality seems to be a better predictor of performance. Now that would make sense. If you have a lot of control in your job, then you have the ability to show and express your personality. In some jobs where there's a lot of structure and you don't have the opportunity to have any freedom, you're not going to be able to show your personality. And then in those jobs, personality doesn't seem to make a difference in terms of predicting performance. Okay, the Janet Jackson Control album cover really dates me. No laughing at me, guys. Sorry about that. I had to do it. So, to sum this section up, what we know is that the Big Five predicts work performance beyond G. Okay, beyond cognitive ability. We also know that personality seems to be related to the motivational aspects of work. So it seems to describe what a person will do, while G, or cognitive ability, is related to the technical aspects of work, or what a person can do. We also know that conscientiousness, is probably the most important personality variable. We also know, as we just discussed, that conscientiousness, if you break it down, is a combination of dependability and achievement. But we also know from our study of the Big Five that extroversion and agreeableness are important in jobs requiring a high degree of interpersonal work. Finally, we know that personality has a greater influence on behavior in situations where employees have control. Even though personality seems to be an important topic, one question that people seem to ask over and over is whether or not people can fake their responses on a personality inventory. Well, one of the things that we do in our field is that we can verify information when people report it. Also, we can sometimes embed lie scales. And so there are ways of looking at that. But another question that we ask is whether or not faking matters. And the idea here is that we all manage our impressions in a different way. In other words, the person that you guys are listening to right now is not the same person that I present myself as in front of my husband or in front of my friends. And so we all try to manage our our presentations and our personalities, and we all present ourselves in different lights depending upon where we are. So that also applies in the workplace. We try to present ourselves in a specific way. And so although people present themselves in these favorable ways, it doesn't seem to make a difference. One of the things we also know is that there doesn't appear to be differences in personality with regard to race and ethnicity. However, there does seem to be some differences in personality across gender, basically meaning that women are better than men in all areas. Okay, that was a joke. That was a joke. Just kidding. If we look at the big picture here, we find that if we're trying to predict work performance, G is a big factor. Now let's add conscientiousness. This is how much more of the prediction of work we would get if we used conscientiousness as a predictor. Now you may be looking at this and say, well, conscientiousness doesn't seem to be that big of a deal, doesn't make up that much more, but anytime we capture more of that white space in the work performance domain, it's a good thing because we want to predict as much of work performance as we can. And the more we predict, the more we know about how well a person will do on the job, and that is good. So conscientiousness and G are our two big hammers when it comes to employment selection. Let's finish up by taking a quick look at a somewhat unpopular area in IO psychology, and that's the area of vocational interests. Think of vocational interests as simply expressions of liking in terms of environments and activities. Holland's work in this area is the most popular, and he came up with a typology that consists of 6 different interests arranged along a hexagon. It's called the RIASEC, and basically the way you measure based upon these interests indicates what types of vocations you may work well in. RIASEC stands for 6 different interests, and those are realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. Now, IO psychologists have always been kind of poo-poo on the idea of vocational interests, and they've said things like, hey, vocational interests don't predict job performance, and hey, vocational interests are for counselors and not IO psychologists. Well, let's wait a second. If you're in a job that you're not interested in, what happens? You're not going to be very happy, right? And what are the consequences of dissatisfaction for job performance and your tenure? Well, you're not going to be very happy and you're not going to stay very long. And another thing we know is that there are reliable associations between vocational interests and job performance. So they do seem to predict some of that white space in performance. And shouldn't we care about job satisfaction and whether or not people will stay in their jobs? Yeah, I think we should. Are you interested in more? Would you like to take the RIASEC inventory? Well, we'll place a link for you to take it online. And there's a checklist there once you get there that you can fill out. After you finish and determined your top 3 clusters or types, go and look at the different career clusters that are located at the link that we'll also post on Blackboard. When you go to that link, you'll find that there's a number of different occupations, and you can see different videos that might be suited for you. So if you're a person who's not exactly sure what you want to do in terms of your career, this would be a great thing to take and a great thing to look at. And of course, I'd be happy to discuss this further with you if you're interested. I hope you've enjoyed this information and this discussion on individual differences, and I look forward to talking with you guys on our next topic. Take care.